In that Pew study that made all the news a couple of months ago, did anybody bother to ask, how did you identify who is a Christian and who is not? Remember the whole headlines across the country saying, Christianity is sliding into the dirt, right? It's dying and all of this stuff. Your first question should be, wait a minute, how do you know that people used to be Christians or are Christians now? How did you define that? And what the Pew study said was respondents' religious affiliation, also sometimes referred to as their religious identities, based on self-reports. Whatever they said, we took them at their word. So Catholics, for instance, are defined as all respondents who say they are Catholic, regardless of their specific beliefs and whether or not they attend Mass regularly. And then, of course, you have, like I said, the other guys. This is very interesting because there are specific standards that we can claim. As a matter of fact, historically, the church has thrived on these specific standards. We don't hear about them as much anymore. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis made the point very, very well. And he used this analogy. He said, the word gentleman originally meant something recognizable. It was one who had a coat of arms and some landed property. A gentleman was a person of high rank in the English royal system. So when you called someone a gentleman, you were not paying him a compliment, but merely stating a fact. If you said he was not a gentleman, you were not insulting him, but giving information. There was no contradiction to say that John was a liar and a gentleman, any more than there is now saying that James is a fool and has an M.A. See, the concept of gentleman determined specific attributes of the individual. But then there came people who say, oh, so rightly, charitably, spiritually sensitive, so anything but usefully. But surely the important thing about a gentleman is not the coat of arms and the land, but the behavior, isn't it? Surely he is a true gentleman who behaves as a gentleman should. Surely in that sense, Edward is far more truly a gentleman than John. Well, they meant well, Lewis continues. To be honorable and courteous and brave is, of course, a far better thing than to have a coat of arms. But it's not the same thing. Worse still, it is not the thing that everyone will agree about. To call a man a gentleman in this new, refined sense becomes, in fact, not a way of giving information about him, but a way of praising him. To deny that he's a gentleman becomes simply a way of insulting him. When a word ceases to be a term of description and becomes merely a term of praise, it no longer tells you facts about the object. It only tells you about the speaker's attitude to that object. A nice meal only means that it's a meal the speaker likes. And this is the problem we have sometimes in Christianity, is we don't know what are at least the minimum attributes that require someone to be a Christian. I would argue that to be a Christian means that you're forgiven by God. You're regenerated as a new creation and have the Holy Spirit living inside of you. I think these are fundamental. The problem is, to be regenerated by God, to be forgiven by Him, to be put in right order and in right standing with Him, and to have the Holy Spirit living inside of you are not things that you and I can tell about one another right away. Or if at all, those are internal aspects, relational aspects between the individual and God Himself. We can't see those things. What we can do, though, is look at some of the beliefs that that individual holds as a reflection of those things that are happening inside of him. This is kind of what John was pointing at, that if you remain in the Father and the Son, right? He's talking about his beliefs about who Jesus is, who the Father is, how I relate to them. Verse 23, no one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever confesses the Son has the Father also. So you see in this passage, John is talking about confession of the Son. There are certain beliefs that we can identify as coming from a Christian, and he seems to make that pretty clear. If you don't confess the Son in a certain way, then you're not a Christian. And if you do confess it, only Christians can say these kinds of things, assuming that the person is not trying to intentionally deceive. We'll throw that out, because there can be people who know all the nomenclature, who can lie to you, and in their heart they really don't believe it. They walk the other way. There are some people who can lie to themselves Like I said, we can't see the inside of those folks, but we can at least ask the question on the beliefs. And John, in verse 26, says, we can spot those trying to deceive us, and quote, so that when he appears, Jesus appearing, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame in his coming. This is why this topic is so important. It's important because we don't want to be ashamed that we didn't have this information and we were deceived.